Making this asymmetric neckline can be a bit technical, and so you will need some contouring, so you will not have gapping. So I folded the brown paper into two, and I'm simply creating the neckline of 3 inches width and 2 inches depth. So I marked half of the shoulder, and because I'll be using this for a boo-boo, I'll go down with 1.5 inches at the shoulder, at the shoulder measurement, and I'll connect it slantly like this. So after that, I'll cut out the neckline. So for the asymmetric neckline, I went down with 6.5 inches. From the neck width, I went in with 2 inches, and I'll be connecting that line to the 6.5 inches I marked. And using the ruler, I'll connect the other side of the neck width to meet the 6.5 inches depth that we marked. And then I'll be using the curve part of this pattern master to just curve out this other part of it, just to give it that effect. And because I don't want it to gap, I will measure what I have on the other side of the neck width and divide it into two. At that point, I'll mark that point and make a line downwards. Now, on both sides of this line, I'll observe 1/4 inch. So that means I'm using 1/2 inch to contour. You can use 1/2 inch on both sides, which will make it 1 inch for contouring if you don't want, if you really want it very tight. Okay, because I'm using it for a boo-boo, I now okay with that. So at the left side of the neck width, I went down with 1 inch and I connected it to meet the shoulder. This I will have to do on both sides. And for the dart, I need to contour this before I will cut it out. And reconnect the slants. After I've done that, I'll cut out the neckline. So remember the contouring. I said we'll observe this on the two sides of the neck width. So when I have cut out the neckline, I'll place this on the facing. Okay. Now remember, I'm using it for a boo-boo, so that's why you're not seeing a blouse. I simply make this neckline, so I'll use it for the boo-boo. I cut it on the facing. Now, what I mean by facing is a piece of fabric. It will be taking this shape, and when I am done cutting the front panel of the boo-boo, I'll simply place this facing on, of the front panel. So I trace out the neckline and the shoulder parts. Okay, so after I've done that, I'll simply take out the outer shape as well. When I've cut it out, remember I traced the neckline. So I'll set the pattern aside and simply follow the shape that I traced out to create a seam allowance. I'll be sewing on the seam allowance and then cut out the neckline using the initial tracing. At the edge there, you make it longer. So if you're using 1/2 inch at the seam allowance, you use about 1 inch at that V part, just so you get your V right. So remember the shoulder slope, I said it will be on both sides. So I'll cut this out first before I bring in the neckline. Now, if you're making it on a blouse, you must have observed all the slants on your draft. So when you're cutting it on the fabric, you have already contoured everything that you needed to contour out, and you're simply placing it on your fabric and cut it out with your seam allowance. So after cutting out that shoulder contour, I'll open it up and bring in, the neckline that we traced out, the right side of it facing the right side, and the part that you traced out the neckline will be the one facing up. So that means you must have traced this out on the wrong side of the fabric. So you must make sure that it aligns properly and pin it down. And then I'll take it to the machine. I'll sew it on that line of allowance that I traced out. And when I'm cutting out the neckline, it will be the first tracing of the neckline. So it's more like cutting your neckline out and using 1/2 inch to sew following your neckline. So at the machine, I'm simply sewing that allowance like I said. And I'll cut out this part, and notch the V part. And simply trim out a little more of the allowance that I have there, just so it won't be bulky when I turn it inside out. I'll top stitch. Make sure that you don't top stitch to the V part so you will not alter it, that V effect. So after top stitching it to some part, I'll give it a good praise. And this is what it looks like. If this tutorial helps you to make this neckline, leave a comment for me in the comment section. Give me a like. Share this tutorial. Thank you so much. So after I've gotten the front neckline, I'll simply mark that which I have on the back neckline and mark 1/2 inch away from that neckline. Okay, so measuring that I have about 1.5 inches. I'll mark it all the way around the back neckline. Now remember, this back neckline is the initial 2 inches depth and 2.5 inches wide. Okay, so I'll mark it following that previous neckline and cut it out. And then I'll be using that 1/2 inch to turn this neck with its own facing. So if this tutorial helps you to create this neckline, please leave a comment for me in the comment section. Give me a thumbs up so other people can get to see it. Subscribe for more tutorials like this. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in my next video.